Okay, episode 3. Here we go. Thanks for coming back. So, thanks for coming back, guys. I know last episode I left you guys on a bit of a cliffhanger, and believe me, I heard it. A few people messaged me and were like, man, really? A cliffhanger, Joe? A cliffhanger? I'm sorry, guys. I had to do it. It was just too much information to put in the one video, so I had to split it up. So here we go, episode 3. And we left off where I was back with my parents. I made the call to go back home. It was the smartest call of my life, really. I was beginning to get myself put back together, little by little. It wasn't an easy process. You know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I was Mr. Perfect through all this and that I didn't have any problems. I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes and I was in bad shape, really. I was skinnier than I had ever been. I looked terrible. A lot of people around me thought that I was abusing drugs to a very high level at that point. It really wasn't that. And this is where things get a little like what's the best way to say this? I'm sorry. Self-knowledge or self-awareness. There we go. Self-awareness of understanding of what's going on with yourself and knowing what's happening to yourself is very important. And focusing on your mental health is extremely important in life. I know a lot of people look at mental health things like, you know, it's nothing, it's not even real to some people, but that you're wrong. Okay, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. Your mental health can put you in such a bad spot, you will not even understand what has happened to you. And that's what was happening to me. I was depressed. I was heavily depressed. The woman that I loved had left me. She was moving on. And for me, my whole life had been flipped upside down. So now I'm back home with my parents and I'm trying to piece myself together and I'm doing it. You know, I'm doing it little by little. I'm starting to look better. I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to overall just appreciate my situation a little bit more. I'm getting more time with my daughter now, which also helps makes things a whole lot better for me. Whether you noticed it or not, I'm two different people in life. Without my daughter, I am a completely different individual to when she's around. So now things are beginning to feel okay, I'll say. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're feeling great. And something I might not have gotten across to you guys in the other videos was the fact that most of this all happened in the span of about a year. This all happened the year before Sam actually started going to school. So right before she went into kindergarten, all of this stuff has happened in the span of a year. And we always say time moves so quick, but let me tell you something. When things are going bad, and I mean really bad, time drags to an absolute stop. You feel every second of every day just because you're not in a good place. And again, through most of this, as much as I would love to blame the outside elements and it was my ex's fault and it was this one's fault and it was that one's fault that I was in this place, a lot of it falls on me too, because I just wouldn't accept the things that were going on around me and actually deal with them. I tried to pretend like it wasn't even happening and just continue on with life. You can't do that. You have to face down your demons. You have to accept what's happening to you, face it down like a man, and own it. So I'm spending more and more time with my daughter now. Things are getting better. And then all of a sudden, like life has a habit of doing, there's actually a quote from a movie that I love. It's Deadpool. He says, life is an endless series of train wrecks with only brief intermission moments of happiness. And this was the way I felt about my life at the time. That is exactly the way I felt. Because here was this brief intermission-like moment where I felt good. I felt things were going as good as they could, considering all the situations that were going on in my life. And the phone went off one day. And on the other end of the phone was my ex. Apparently, the woman she's seeing, yes, you heard that right. I said woman. She decided she liked women. That's fine. It was still, a bit of a kick to the head for me. But whatever. She was happy. Her ex had decided that she didn't like all this, and not through actual care for my child or any of those things, but through pure hatred and wanting to cause problems, she had put a phone call in to Children's Protective Services claiming that my daughter was not safe with us. Now, Understand this. I'm getting this phone call. I live a town away now. I don't live like a couple blocks away like I used to. I live a town away now. So I don't know what's going on. She calls me, says they're on their way down to the division's office, that they have to go take drug tests and all this other stuff. And can I get down there to be with Sam? So, of course. So I don't have a car at the time. I walk. It's about an hour walk down to go see my daughter. I did it because that's my daughter. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I walk down to go see her. I get there. And before they've even met me, Children Protective Services has decided that I am not safe to be with my daughter. Now, that always messed my head up. It never made a whole lot of sense to me because you don't even know me. How can you determine I'm not fit to be a father if you don't even know who I am? It was an absolute just crushing blow for me when they hadn't even actually spoke to me yet. So my ex comes back and it turns out that her situation is not great. And Children Protective Services tells me that, hey, listen, we're going to come talk to you tomorrow. So they actually send a caseworker out to come see me. And I'm completely honest with the woman. At the time, I was in pain management because of my situation with the tumors and all. I showed her the medications I was on at the time, all legal, all written by a doctor. I had to get drug tested every month by a doctor, the whole nine, right? She turned to me and said, if we go for a drug test right now and all that comes up in your system is the medication you're taking, then you're fine. And this is all over with. So, of course, I jumped right on it. I said, absolutely. Got in the car with her, went down, did the drug test. The nurse who administered the test said to the woman, this is what's in his system. And she said, well, what's that? Now, if you don't know, morphine, oxycodone, Oxycontin, Percocets, Vicodin, all those things are basically opioids, right? Opioids is basically another branch of heroin. They come up the same in a test, essentially. I don't know about now. This is going back a few years. So now there might be a way to differentiate the two. I'm not sure. But back then, apparently, there wasn't. And what the nurse said to her was, he's on these medications. He's going to come up positive for this. And the caseworker said, well, can you tell if it's that or if it's something else? And she said, well, no, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that as long as he's on this medication, it's going to come up positive. So we're driving back to my house, and I turned to her and said, okay, so I did my part. I'm good now, right? She called her boss, and her boss determined that, no, I wasn't good, that this wasn't good enough for them. And I said, well, wait a minute, I don't understand. You told me as long as I did what you asked, and all that came up was the medication being prescribed by my doctor, that I was fine. Now, apparently, I'm not fine. So now I get back to my house and my parents' home, and I'm in a bad, I'm bad. I'm ready to snap. I'm ready to lose my mind here because my daughter means everything to me. And they have just told me I can't be alone with my daughter. This is what they've told me now, that I am not allowed to be alone with my child. I'm losing it at this point. The caseworker shows up at my parents' house that night to tell them exactly what's going on. And I lost it on her right there. I said, in my opinion, you're a liar. You lied to me. You made me a promise. You told me if I did what you asked, we would be good. And we're not. I'm in a worse spot now. I said, and I did exactly what you asked me to do. And exactly what I told you would happen is what happened. And the nurse behind the counter even said it this way. So now they set it up to where we have to go through the whole process. We're going to have to go to court with DIFUS and the whole nine. And it was the scariest time of my life because the reality was that if the judge or whoever decided so, I might not be allowed to have my daughter. And this is the hardest part of my life. This is it right here. You know, the surgeries, all those things, whatever, man, I'll take 100 more of those, but don't take Sam because she's the whole reason that any of my life makes sense for me. That was the reality of what was going on here. And we went to the first court date and they decided I had to go for another drug test. Now they wanted me to go for a blood test. Same thing happens again. it comes up positive. And the same thing, the technician says, as long as he is on these medications, he's going to come up positive. So now they ask my doctor for all the drug tests he's been giving me. Because when you go to pain management, if they're running the clinics properly, you have to get drug tested at every appointment. And that's the way this clinic was. I had to be drug tested at every appointment. So they asked my doctor for a year's worth of drug tests, which he handed over to them. I did everything I was supposed to do. I was racking my brain. I did not know what else to do at this point. And it was a never-ending struggle for me. I felt like every time I walked into that courtroom, and this is just my opinion, again, this is only the way it felt to me. It felt to me like every time I walked in there, as a father, I had to prove to them that I deserved to be a father to my daughter. Whereas my ex, it felt like no matter what she did, they were just going to keep rolling out the carpet and giving her more and more chances. She was in a bad place in life. She needed help and nobody was seeing it. And again, I don't blame her for anything that happened. And I hope she knows that too. I don't blame her for anything that went on. Life gives you all these curveballs. It gives you all these problems. It kicks you when you're down. But she needed help, and none of us really opened our eyes to the fact that she did. So I'll take my blame for that. But I was trying to get back on the road with me and my daughter, and it just felt like every time I tried to do the right thing and I tried to do what they were asking me to do, it was never enough. I was getting exhausted. Just physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted from the whole thing. You got to understand here, the only way I'm seeing my daughter at this time is if somebody else that DYFS is cleared, okay? They had to take this person and clear them as a legal caregiver, is if I'm with that person. If I'm not with them, I'm not allowed to be alone with my daughter. This is the hardest moment of my life. This is it here. And what's going to happen? I didn't know at the time. I was completely, absolutely lost at the time. You're going to court dates every single month for what feels like 10 years. The reality is it was about 3 months, but it felt like it was about 10 years. It felt like it was never going to end. And here's where you guys get mad at me, because this is where this video is going to end. Sorry, guys. I can't really go into the rest of this without getting a little more angry. So I promise you we will touch on it in episode 4. I thank you all so much for sitting through these episodes with me. I hope you guys are enjoying them, and I hope you guys will come back for the next one. I know this one feels like a whole lot of kicks and knocking people down, but you got to remember, it's always darkest before the dawn. So looking back, it's easy for me to say that, I know. At the time, it was hard to understand it. So now I'm trying to share that stuff with you guys and let you guys know that even when it feels like it's at its worst, things can always turn themselves around. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.